All right, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. It's 10:30, and we're trying to get started early. We're typically not used to crowds at these zoning administrator hearings. My name is Vernie Carvajal. I'm the city's zoning administrator, and this morning we have one item before us. This is our members of the applicant here, our representatives of the applicant here?
I think the owner.
Great. Well, welcome. Thank you. This is a time and place for the public hearing to consider the item before us this morning, which is tentative parcel map number 2017-01. I'm going to go ahead and have staff identify the property and issues and go ahead and present staff recommendations on this item. Ivan?
Thank you, Mr. Zoning Administrator. Thank you, members of the public, for coming in today. As you know, the item for today is tentative parcel map number 2017-01. It's for the property located at 2001 West Trask Avenue. And I'll just describe a little bit of the project. As you are aware, the parcel itself is close to an acre. The applicant has applied for a subdivision of the parcel itself into three individual parcels for single-family use. So part of the project is to split the lot into three, and for the two new vacant lots to construct single-family dwellings. We have a set of guidelines and there's zoning requirements to cover the development standards and the design guidelines for the new construction. As part of the project, the applicant has conformed the design to meet all those standards, and no additional discretionary items will be required. The site itself is zoned R1, single family. The general plan, which, as you know, it's our long-term vision for the city, is also low density residential, which allows for a single family use. As far as the development standards for setbacks, requirements, height, all those things, the tentative parcel map and the proposed construction of these homes, they meet all those standards. Staff has identified that no additional issues lie with the tentative parcel map and the proposed construction, and therefore has recommended approval of the tentative parcel map at this location.
Thank you, Ivan. Let's go through some ground rules here this morning. If you wish to address the zoning administrator, please follow your name and address to the secretary on the form provided. I see that a few of you have, so thank you for that. Please note that comments and remarks are limited to 3 minutes in length, unless there's an extension of time granted by the ZA. Sometimes there's some issues that require additional discussion. So on a meeting like this, I don't have a problem with allowing folks to kind of speak more than the 3-minute mark if it's warranted. All right, the action of the zoning administrator is final following consent of the planning commission. So this particular item would be going to the planning commission for final consent. This is the public hearing for the item, but should you wish to appeal, you have 10 days from the date of the ZA's action to appeal to the planning commission. All right, has the commission secretary received any written communications regarding the matter which have not been distributed?
No, they have all been distributed and also are included in the packet.
Thank you. All right. I will briefly go over those items. We have one email from a Sharon. The email came from Sharon Nellis, but the email correspondence was from Barbara Muirhead. Is that correct? I'm not sure if she's here with us today.
She's not here.
All right. And then we also have an email from David Rupert, who was also forwarding a message from Mr. Orozco, a nearby homeowner. Is that person here this morning?
No.
All right. And those appear to be the two items. Is that correct, Sarah?
There was
Maybe one more?
Mr. Mraz also.
Sal Mraz.
Yeah, Mr. Mraz.
Along with Terry Steele.
Oh, this one. Okay.
Came in.
Thank you. I did receive this one. Thank you. All right. Why don't we go ahead and open the public hearing? It is now 10:36, and we'll go ahead and listen to public testimony. And we'll get started here. We have 4 speakers this morning. We will start with Mr. James Owens. Mr. Owens?
Believe it or not, I should have been speaking last, but I'll definitely speak first.
Okay.
I'm at 2105. I'm just outside or inside the circle. So I'm just outside the construction. I do not have a sidewalk. Going back 17 years ago, we had a representative from the city, we had a homeowners meeting, and there was a gentleman who wanted to put a sidewalk in. So now, fast forward 17 years, now we're going to get a sidewalk. Will 2105 come up any form or any way within this meeting for the sidewalk at Lamb's residence versus my residence at 2105? That's pretty well really the only thing that my input is. You know, I don't have nothing to do with the construction, the street, other than I'm further back or away from the construction. So my only concern again is, will 2105 somehow come up in conversation with the construction to the street?
Sure. All right, thank you. So to clarify, you're on the easterly side, closer to the cul-de-sac. The existing parcel is the large parcel. Would you be the first or second property to the north?
I'm the opposite to the cul-de-sac.
Okay.
I'm the opposite.
So you're on the south side of the street?
Right.
Actually, no,
He's on the west side.
He's on the west side,
Okay.
further down. Yeah.
So you're closest to the existing home on the property?
No,
No.
he's further down
I'm
than that.
Also a few over.
Yeah.
All right, so I did have an opportunity to drive the site. It looks like essentially the northerly curb is all rolled curb right now. There's no improved sidewalks. Your question is,
I've got a pygmy sidewalk.
okay,
My sidewalk, let me rephrase that. I do not have a sidewalk. I've got a curb. I've got probably 20 inches of grass for my sidewalk. So people walk on my grass if they want to choose to walk on my side of the property, or as in the street.
understood. So your question is related to whether or not your property will be affected by this development, and if so, if there would be provisions for a new sidewalk as part of your residence.
Absolutely. I'm just asking, will my residents come up part of the conversation once it goes to the planning commission?
All right, once we're done with public testimony, I'll go ahead and allow staff to address that question. Is there anything else you'd like
No,
to add?
that's all.
Thank you.
I'm happy.
Thanks for being here this morning. All right, so the next speaker that we have is Mr. Kurt Rice.
That'd be me. I live at 1910, which is on the east, the east side, at the end of the cul-de-sac, on the other side. Sorry, yes, there, exactly where your hand is now.
Okay.
And well, I understand, as briefed, that the property is in compliance with all state, city regulations for height. This property, all the properties on the street are mid-century, mid-20th century or earlier. And while we're no Floral Park or Washington Square, you can see various changes and developments where some of these older properties have been ripped down and then had these, what my wife calls monstrosities, constructed. And while we understand that everything is within code compliance, and we fully understand the desire to develop these properties, this is Orange County after all, and the process of chopping up orange groves and putting up properties is in tenor with the rest of the county. We have a tight-knit community down here, and we are looking towards a time when our children and grandchildren can come to this place and see these kind of houses, this historical area. Just as we respect the architectural continuity of places like Washington Square and Floral Park, we would also like our community to have that, these kind of communities to begin to have that same consideration. And we are concerned. Again, while we respect the rights of individual property owners to develop their properties we see fit with a minimal amount of government interference, we would also like to have the folks that are in the area be considered. You know, these are one-story ranch-style homes built in the mid 20th century, and they are beginning to go from being, oh, that's just an old house, to, you know, that's a house with historical significance. And so my wife and I oppose the development. Clearly to oppose the development of this property. This is the last of the early 20th century orange groves that were placed there. So we as the plan stands now, 2-story, generic Southwest exterior, Las Vegas style, Phoenix style housing. We oppose that development of those houses in that area.
Okay.
So please put us on record as that.
Thank you. And just to clarify, the item before us this morning has to do with the subdivision of property.
Oh,
Not
not the development of
Not
the house?
necessarily the application to develop.
Yeah, that's
although-
a step towards it, right.
Although the application to develop a single-family dwelling in this neighborhood would be ministerial at that point. So understand your concerns. You have some issues related to the contextual architecture of the neighborhood. I did have a drive down the site, and down the street, and I did
Oh,
see
thank
that
you.
most of them are single-story with attached post-war era homes, starting to come around that 50-year part. So I see your point of view, and thank you for being here. So you're in opposition to the subdivision, to clarify?
Yeah, I mean, if it's done with care, you know, we're obviously worried about the whole slippery slope argument. If the city says, yeah, we can subdivide, and that all of the requirements for the subdivision and the proposals for the home, all the elevations have already been laid out, and all of the architectural external choices have already been made based on those plans, that's just another check mark down the list. So the owner should understand that we're not stalling because we want to take money from you or anything. We are really, really concerned that this is going to produce this thing in our neighborhood that's going to be completely out of place with the nature of the neighborhood. And we'd like somehow, we don't have solicitors or any kind of attorneys here to represent us, but we really want our voices to be heard, and we are opposed to anything that goes ahead that's going to detract from that nature of that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Anything further?
Not at this time.
All
thank
right.
you.
With that, we'll move on to Mr. Timothy Steele.
How you doing? I live at 1926, directly across from the property. The Winds are wonderful neighbors. We respect them for taking their opportunities to build these houses they had mentioned for their kids. As he mentioned, the size of the home just going to be overpowering for the street. One of the questions I have is, how is this going to financially impact us as a neighbor? Is this going to affect our tax base, or is there going to be any kind of financial increase on us in any way? And then to carry on, would be how long would the construction take, and when is it supposed to take place and stuff like that? So, just the impact of what's the impact on us? Is there any impact?
So to clarify, you have two concerns. The first is potential financial impacts to the neighborhood, specifically the tax base. And second, you were inquiring about the proposed the proposed construction schedule for the property,
Right.
and how you impact your neighborhood. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Is there anything further, Mr. Steele?
No, I think that's right this
All
second.
right. Well, thank you. And we also have Terry Steele this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Caballo. We have many concerns, most of which were echoed by Kurt, Mr. Rice here. My concern, or what I'm asking is there any consideration for single-story homes? We certainly don't want to impact the Winds property. We wouldn't want someone to do the same to us. However, putting two large homes on that piece of property does not fit in with the neighborhood in any way, shape, or form. If you look at our whole neighborhood, 99% of it is single-family homes, single-story homes. Our concern is the risk for multiple family homes, which we know that creates more vehicles, more traffic, more people living in homes than it's maybe planned for. That is a huge concern for us. Is it going to be homeowners living there, and is it going to be one family, mom, dad, and a couple of kids, or is it going to be mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles, and children? And we've already experienced something like that on the renter side with someone who lives in our cul-de-sac in a single family home. So to increase it into a two-story home, the impact would be huge for our little neighborhood. It's an orange grove, it's a historic area that should be preserved in as much as it can be, and I think that's my primary concern.
All right. Is there anything further?
No.
Great. So I understand that you have concerns with the neighborhood scale related to the height and massing over all the proposed structures, and you were concerned with the potential for these homes due to their size to become multi-tenant type of living situations where there might be some parking neighborhood impacts. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you. Anything else?
I echo the same concerns of my husband. When is the construction going to take place? How long is it going to take? What is going to be the impact on the neighborhood with respect to sound and traffic with construction vehicles?
Sure.
Are there going to be limitations on the construction? Is it going to take place 5 days a week, 7 days a week? What's the starting time? What's the end time?
Sure.
Of course, we're concerned about what the fiscal impact to our home value is going to be during construction and post-construction. I mean, say in a year from now, we've said, you know what, we're done with this, we want to sell. Is our home price today going to be greater than it is in a year from now? That's a huge concern. You know, we've worked hard to do a nice thing for our neighborhood. We are a close group. We really are. It's echoed over and over again about all of us and how close we are as neighbors and friends. We take care of each other. We look out for one another. And for that to change would be, it would be tragic.
Has somebody done a
Thank you.
traffic study already?
Excuse me,
Oh,
sir.
I'm sorry.
Is there anything further that you'd like to add? All right, great. I'm sorry, sir, what was your
No,
name?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to piggyback. Has there been a
I'm
traffic
sorry, what was
study?
your name?
Kurt Rice. I'm
Kurt,
sorry.
did you
Yep.
fill out a request to speak, Miss?
I did, yeah. I spoke
Oh,
earlier.
you did speak earlier.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
did.
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to ask, has there been a traffic study already done for the? Because it is a really narrow little, and it just. So.
Okay, so you have questions on whether there's a traffic
Yeah,
study?
yeah. I didn't know
Got
that
it.
because I didn't hear it mentioned.
All right, anything further?
No.
All right, and we have one other member here. Did you have something to add, miss?
I'm an original owner.
Great, what was your name? Can you please state your name for the
Hattie
record?
Dumon, D-U-M-O-N.
Okay,
And we built, they were half-acre parcels being sold. They bought a full acre, we bought a half acre. We're right next door.
great. So you're here to the east of the property, just right
Yes.
next door? Okay,
He's the
Now,
west, she's the
we
west.
Other
don't-
direction.
over
yeah,
here.
Watson, yeah.
Got it.
We don't have, we were there before the track where they lived, where it was built. We built in 1958. Our street right in front of us is not finished, and it's just the way it is all the way down. But are they gonna make me put in sidewalks? And I was told we didn't have to because we're original owners, that we didn't have to have the curb and the sidewalk. So, are they gonna make me do it?
Okay. So your question, to clarify, is whether or not your property would then be required to put in a sidewalk
Right.
as a result of this development. You would incur the cost to improve your sidewalk and install a sidewalk due to this applicant's
And I have to
proposal.
pay for that,
That is
right?
your question.
And plus, my taxes will go up, right?
Well, we're not sure we're ready to discuss that yet, but we'll get into that. A few others have discussed that issue, and we'll try to address that this morning. Anything else? Thank you. All right, so plenty of folks have some issues here. Why don't we, is there any other members of the public? Are there any other members of the public here that wish to speak? All right, so with that, at 10:48, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. What I'd like to do is ask staff to address a few of these concerns, and I might be able to jump in a little bit, Ivan, here as well. Why don't we start with Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Is that
yes.
correct? Mr. Owens had some questions related to a sidewalk just down the street. He currently has no sidewalk and wasn't sure if you consulted with Public Works, Ivan, and whether there are plans to improve the sidewalk just west of the project site.
So I did see that Mr. Owens's property is just down the street. As far as the development or the required improvements as a sidewalk, for example, it will, and this question might address a few of the other concerns from a few of you. The development or the construction of the sidewalk will only be for the project site. So it takes, it'll answer both questions for both.
And that's-
but
Yeah, we really have to explain that to Ms. Dumont, so she
Yeah, so-
understands where her.
So just to clarify, and I'll answer the question, I guess, for both,
Yeah.
the sidewalk requirement will only be requested from the project site. No additional properties will be affected at this point.
There you go. That answers
So you would
both
have
our
to
questions.
And no,
So,
no
Mr.
cost.
Munn, you would not be required to put in a sidewalk.
Just to follow up on Ms. Dumont, will they try to change her frontage as they go in at all because she's so close, but they'll just work on the construction site?
It'll be just for the construction site, the development site
Yeah.
of 2001. No other property will be affected or requested to improve any piece of sidewalk that isn't there.
So cities do from time to time move forward with sidewalk improvements in areas that don't have improved sidewalks. This particular application today is for subdivision of one property into 3 lots. Each of those 3 proposed lots will be required to install sidewalks per city standard. Adjacent lots are unknown at this time. If there is kind of a point where it makes sense for the city to come in and explore whether or not sidewalks make sense, then at that point you will be notified, and I believe the city is typically in charge of the cost and installation of those walkways where they see pertinent. But they will definitely reach out to you and let you know that the project would move forward at that point.
Just a last question, probably for myself, because I own the land that may be, a sidewalk will go on, same as Ms. Dumont, she owns her land. So then we're going into another conversation down the road.
Potentially there could be some conversations down the road, and so the way sidewalks are handled in this city and most cities are through easement purposes. So you continue to own the land, the city would just take an easement for sidewalk purposes, in this case, to install the sidewalk over your property.
Okay, so
I don't know what the cost implications would be from the city, or if there's any type of, monetary exchange that happens when those things are installed, but we can certainly look into that for you.
I like that language, the city takes the land.
Well, it's an easement over your property, so you technically still own the property, but they install a sidewalk over it.
Well said.
All right. Let's move on here. Mr. Rice, you had some questions about architecture. Ivan, I did review, and I'm going to just jump in here, the proposed drawings. I did have some concerns with a few of the architectural elevations, namely the front elevations of the 2 proposed homes. I do kind of echo some of the concerns of the local residents that say, the scale and massing of the homes appears to be fairly large. However, I was involved with the city's planning division, where we made some significant changes to our zoning ordinance to limit things like mansionization, which we had citywide. We reduced maximum lot coverage from 50% to 35%, and we did require applicants to submit elevations that had proposed step backs on proposed elevations to hopefully curb some of that, just mansionization that's happening kind of citywide. The first elevation that has some horizontal siding appears to match kind of closely with the neighborhood and the adjacent property, but I do see their point when it comes to some of the scale of those homes. Now, to clarify, this property currently today is zoned R1 single family residential. So any neighbor within this neighborhood has the ability and is afforded the right to do a 2-story home. We do subject all of submittals to our design and development standards, which are to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis by the individual planner. So I'm going to ask Ivan to maybe work with the applicant a bit to talk about the future architecture for these 2 homes, but I had some other concerns that we'll get to as we move on. In terms of traffic impacts, there is going to be probably short-term traffic impacts related to construction activities. We will ask the applicant to submit a construction schedule and share that with the neighbors as part of a condition of approval potentially. So Mr. Rice, those were your concerns, and I'm going to kind of walk through the others here. Mr. Steele, you had some questions about financial impacts. Ivan, are you aware of any financial impacts of the tax base on this property to the adjacent properties?
No.
Typically the way this works, and I own real estate, so I kind of know whenever you improve a piece of property, it could directly affect your taxable rate, and that's based on the improvements that you make on your land. Now, whether or not as a whole, a neighborhood is affected either positively or negatively by an improvement, that's really tough to say. I don't know what the market's going to yield tomorrow, if the homes are going to continue an upward trajectory, or if prices are going to stabilize. That's really tough to say. So on the financial impacts, that's really what we have. The site itself clearly will have tax implications. Their property tax rate will definitely be higher. That necessarily won't impact your neighbor's property tax rate. Some folks are kind of subject to Prop 13 and so forth, where their tax rates are fixed at this point. So every property is kind of a case by case. Now, the assessor may go out into a specific neighborhood and do some sort of survey to look at overall cost of homes in the area, and then determine that maybe these, since they were a bit higher, may affect the overall taxable rate. But I couldn't speak professionally on that. that's what I have to offer on the potential impacts to your property base. Let's see here. All right, and Terry Steele, you had some issues related to architecture. You did mention that most of the homes in the neighborhood are one story. And so, as I mentioned, the R1 code currently does allow for 1 and 2 story dwellings. Lots are limited to 35% lot coverage, and parking is going to be required, as would any single family dwelling. Our standard, Ivan, you could correct me if I'm wrong, is 2 parking spaces with an enclosed garage and 2 parking spaces outside of that garage for up to 5 bedrooms on a single family product. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so these proposals are consistent with that requirement?
Yes.
All right.
I'm sorry, may I comment?
Sure.
While in fact I've read the rules, what the R1 stands for and what
Yes.
that means. I understand you have what you've had in place, I get that. But at the same time, is there any way the city can take a look at the big picture of the neighborhood and see that 2 large 2-story homes is just not a good fit for that area? It changes 50 years or more of a neighborhood that, as I said, is prideful of Santa Ana and is prideful in their neighborhood. And I just don't see why the city cannot take a close look at that and maybe reconsider the 2 stories as opposed to a single story.
Sure. As I was mentioning, the item before us this morning has to do with the subdivision of property. We're stretching it a bit by starting to look at architecture, quite honestly. Most cities don't even require architectural elevations when it comes to subdivision of land. But one thing we do look at when we're subdividing property is the contextual neighborhood. So what is the average lot size in the neighborhood? And so from my site visit and then taking a look at the aerial photography in the area, it looks like most of the homes are in the 6,000 to 7,000 square foot range in terms of lot size. Is that correct, Ivan?
Most of the properties, as you all are aware, are pretty large in comparison to the rest of the city. They go from anywhere to 6,000 to even 8,000 square feet. And some of the homes, although they are 1 story, are pretty large, in fact.
Thank you. All right, so that's definitely one of the considerations we will make. We'll ask the applicant to go back and work with Ivan to maybe further reduce the massing along the front elevation and take a look at the architectural style to ensure that it is consistent with the neighborhood. I do have some concerns that I'll bring up kind of after we're done here, and we'll make sure that we make note of that.
Thank you.
You
Yes,
mentioned
sir.
something about 35%. Is that 35% of the property is allowed to be built on? Or is that 35% has to be open space?
It's 35% lot coverage, so you can cover up to 35% of the lot with the footprint of the structure, and that doesn't include 2-story structure. So if it was 1,000 square feet, let's say, you can cover up to 3,500 square feet of that lot with the structure.
From the plot plan, it looks like it's substantially larger than 35%.
It actually doesn't. I took a look at the proposed lots, and they're all in excess of 8,000 square feet, at least the 2 proposed lots, and it looks like they're under that, right? I mean, they're 30% or so, Ivan, is that correct?
Yes, it's under the 35%. Just to mention as well, I wanted to add that our requirements for development standards ask for certain setbacks, and as part of the review for the rest of the neighborhood, understanding that to design something with the least amount of impact is to set the home or the residential structure away from the property lines as much as we can. And so what we've done there is also from the front and the back, rear yard and front yard setbacks is kind of push those as much as we can. So yes, it is under the lot coverage, and there's also other things that we have considered as part of it.
Thank you, Ivan, and that's an important point, just so you folks understand. What Ivan's saying is the R1 standard, and it sounds like Ms. Steele, you did spend some time looking at our R1 code. Our front yard setback requirement today is 20 feet. So technically, any applicant could submit a home to be set back from the sidewalk, let's call it, from the property line 20 feet. That would bring these proposed structures almost up to the street. And so in order to avoid that and try to keep the proposal in harmonious in scale with the neighborhood, we're requiring that setback to be 40 feet, is that right?
It's the predominant setback.
It's almost double the required setback to make sure that it falls in line with the street scale of the existing neighborhood. I understand your concerns with the massing, and we'll take a look at that through subsequent reviews of the plans. Any other concerns?
Could I?
All right.
I don't mind if they put a curb, but if you put a sidewalk, we have orange trees. We're trying to preserve Orange County. And so we have left our orange trees out front and we put our house back further. They're gonna have to take out some of my orange trees in order to put a sidewalk in. Is it possible for them just to put a curb?
Sure, so as Ivan mentioned, there will be no sidewalk improvements in front of your property at this time. In the future, there may be some discussion about either relocating trees or putting in the sidewalk, but that's not part of our application here this morning.
Ms. Dumont, they're not touching your property. They're not touching it.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
Okay, so it appears that we kind of talked through some of these concerns. Now it's my turn. I want to go through these drawings and kind of ask Ivan a few questions that I had. The first is related to the existing residence. And is our property owner Mr. Nguyen here?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Nguyen. I was reviewing your floor plan for your existing home, and I noticed that you had an addition at the rear of the home and then a guest room. What are your plans with the existing home?
For the existing home, so we will live there.
You're going to leave everything as is? So from my understanding, you're going to demolish the existing one-car garage and build a two-car garage that's consistent with the code, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I did find some inconsistencies, Ivan, when I went back and took a look at the building card in terms of the square footage of the existing house compared to what they're showing on the plan. So that makes me a little bit concerned showing with the proposed design as the roof plan doesn't match what's out there today, at least on the plan versus what's out there today. So I want to take some time to have staff go back and determine what the actual square footage is of the home that exists today. There is some inconsistencies there. Okay, you're showing almost 1,900 square feet, and the building records don't indicate that. So we need to clean that property up to make sure it's consistent with the code before we allow the property to be subdivided. It's a major concern of mine. Okay. The other question that I had to do with architecture, and it looks like the residents had some issues with that as well. I'm going to ask that Ivan that you work with the applicant to try to maybe make the architecture more consistent with the existing neighborhood, maybe giving us some more step backs along the front elevation specifically. I noticed on a few of the submittals we only had 5 feet on a step back, so I'd like those to be at least 10 feet back where feasible. And then the rear yard, I know some folks had concerns about intrusion and privacy, so one of the things that I'd like to see is that we create some line of sight details for the residents, or at least for staff to review, so that we can determine whether or not there will be any line of sight impacts. They do have a 40-foot setback almost in the rear as well, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So 40 feet in the rear, 40 feet in the front, and I think there's about 7 feet on the easterly side of the last house over here, where which is adjacent to one of the residents here.
Mr. Mraz, he's not able to be here
Okay,
today.
so it's about 6'6" on the side yard. I'm very concerned with that second story elevation on that particular home, so maybe we can work with them on that. You know, I'm not inclined to either approve or disapprove this project at this time. I think there's some significant issues that were brought up by both the neighborhood and some concerns that I have with the existing house. So I'm going to direct staff to go back and look at the approvals for the existing single-family dwelling and make sure that that is all consistent. If there are plans to legalize a portion of the rear of the building that it doesn't appear to have permits at this time, I'd like to see that. And then I would also like to see maybe some attempt at working with the architectural elevations to address some of those massive concerns that we have. How much time do you think, Ivan, that you'll need to work with the applicant to do those things? Is your architect here?
Yeah.
All right, so do you understand my concerns?
Yes, I do understand. Yeah. For me is I understand all the concern here, but what I think is we living in to improve. So
Sure.
we did improve in the neighborhood.
Sure.
Because with the new planning single family house.
Absolutely.
And we still need to do the landscape. I think the owner is put the money to do that.
Understood.
Improve. They have to pay for the sidewalk
Right.
and everything. Improve the neighborhood.
Sure.
I think the neighbor benefit from that
Okay.
in the future. Yeah, what I think.
Sure.
And we living here, we all the time. We need to progress,
Sure.
not look back. If I have a kid 50 years ago living there,
Right.
and my house, when I die, I don't think my kid keep that
Sure.
the same house.
Sure.
They're going to improve it. Okay, that's benefit everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm not living forever. I can keep the house building 100 years ago and still okay for today
Right.
standard. We meet all the requirement.
Right.
So whatever we work, we thank you to working with Ricardo and the planning
Thank
for
you.
more than 6 months.
Right.
Okay, that we
Right.
hope that we will benefit the neighborhood,
Thank you.
not decrease the value of the neighborhood. That's all I can say. Okay, and
Thank you, sir.
yeah, we willing to do everything the city asking, you know, to
Thank you.
to
I just want to follow up on that briefly. So I'm inclined to be supportive of the subdivision here.
Yes.
You clearly exceed the minimum lot size requirement, which is
Yeah.
frankly 6,000 square feet and 50 feet of street frontage. You have a very nice sized lot here, and fortunately, we don't have an area where the lots are 10,000 or 15,000 square feet in size, where it would be tough for staff to say that that size property doesn't really fit in with the neighborhood. In this case, a smaller size lot is very consistent with the existing neighborhood. I think some of the concerns you heard here were related more to architectural consistency. And so it looks like you're willing to kind of work with us a little bit to make sure that the neighborhood's happy, that the residents are happy, and I can't take your property rights away. You have the legal
Yeah,
right
I understand.
to add a single-family dwelling on each of these proposed lots. All we're asking for here is that you kind of work with staff a little bit to make sure that the architectural consistency and the massing isn't really intrusive to the rest of the neighborhood. The square footage of the homes is not really as big of a concern, but it's just the way it's designed. So I think there's just going to be some massaging that's necessary for the architecture, and then some of the issues related to the existing house to make sure everything's clean in our record. We have the square footages that we're telling the planning commission and the city. This piece of this subdivision goes in our building record history. So I want to make sure that whatever we're putting in our records are good records. So
Yeah,
that's it.
right.
It's not a major issue. Thank you for
Yeah,
investing in our
thank
city.
you. Yeah.
I think these homes are going to be a nice improvement to the existing home. At least on the aerial view, I saw that there's some things happening out there that maybe could be improved.
Yeah.
So just so you know, each of the lots, we're creating 3 lots from one. Each of the lots, including the existing house, is going to have to be improved.
Yeah.
We're going to need a landscape plan for the existing house. We're going to need a landscape plan for each of the proposed houses.
Yeah.
So Ivan's going to work with you to make sure we
Yeah,
get those
the other
things.
thing is, I think all the house they have 4 feet side front setback 40
Yes.
feet. That's a huge.
Yeah, it is huge.
That's huge. In the
It
back
is
too,
huge.
and on the side we have the second story. We put it back too, right?
Correct. I saw you did
That's
some
not
of
a
that.
box. It look very nice.
Right, I saw some of
And,
that.
yeah.
So
So
we're going to
that's
take a
why-
look, as I mentioned in my comments.
Yeah.
One of the homes that appears to kind of be closer in
Yeah, and then-
consistency with the neighborhood. The other
Yeah.
one, I'll work with Ivan to see if we can't get a bit more consistency what we have out there.
That's why one property they propose a wood siding to match,
Sure.
the existing house.
Sure.
And we just want something different for the second one. If the city asking for wood siding, we do that too.
Right.
But you don't want to have everything is the same. That's something soften the
Sure.
area if you have everything the same.
Understood.
All right. That's why that's the design.
We appreciate your
Yeah,
willingness to
yeah.
work with us.
Yeah.
We're not going to ask for anything outside of what the city's design standards already ask for.
Mhm.
We don't want to put you on the spot or make you do something that anybody would be asked to do. We want to treat you fairly. We want to give you the same right that the next door neighbor would have when they wanted to build something out there. So today I have some concerns that really resulted from the existing house.
Yes.
I think we could have resolved the issues with architecture down the road and I would have been able to act on this. But I have some serious reservations about the existing house and some of the permits that I found. I think we need a little more time to make sure that we're all clear on what the square footage is for that existing house, so everything's consistent with the code, okay?
All right.
All right, so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and continue this item. Do we have a date certain that we can give Ivan on this item? I think I pulled that. There we go.
Not at this moment.
All right, so our next scheduled ZA hearing would be for February 22nd. That might be a bit soon, a week.
Yeah.
What about the 8th, March 8th?
I think we
Give us
can-
enough time to
we can
research and work on some of those
it.
drawings. All right, so I'm going to continue this item to our next regularly scheduled zoning administrator meeting of March 8th. Okay? This is going to give us a few weeks to work on these plans. Hopefully we can get everything kind of detailed. I do want to see those landscape plans be submitted, and so hopefully we can act on this on that date. All right?
May I make
Yes.
just one final comment, and it's to the family, and I think we all speak the same. We're not trying to impose upon their rights to subdivide their property. That's their property, and we appreciate that. We're by no means opposing that. We're just wanting to look out for the neighborhood. We want this to go well for them, but we also want it to go well for us. So I just want, as neighbors, I don't want this to be impactful, and I want that to be clear.
And just so we're clear, we will go back and take a second look at the architectural elevations. It looks like the applicant has worked with staff for some months to get to this design. We just want to make sure that these concerns, and that we take a second look at the neighborhood and make sure things are consistent. All right?
All right?
Any other questions? Thank you for your time, and have a great day. Thanks for coming out.
Yes.
We're going to request to speak from this